Hello ladies and gentlemen, and today I'm going to talk to you about buying out a business. Some of the things to consider when buying out a business is where you're going to get the funds, how is the transition going to be smooth, some of the things to consider that most people don't, and then actually executing the transition. So every year, our company sets goals, and we usually set goals usually in the month of November. So that way we say, hey, what are the top 3 things we want to do? And then we actually post it to different sites or forums and stuff like that, especially business forums, because some of the people we know, and so usually 3 months in, 6 months in, they usually come back and they'll ask us, hey, how are you doing with your goals? How can we help you with your goals? And it's a pretty good thing to do, so that way people can make sure that you're on track and stuff like that. So in the beginning of November, I had posted our goals for the next year. And one of the things that we wanted to do, which was new, was to buy out another business. So a couple of days later, after we posted it, someone that I had met through another business forum that we had gone, a business seminar we had gone to in October, contacted me. And the proposition that he made, some things threw red flags, and luckily he was pretty forthcoming about it in terms of the situation. So the situation that had happened was he had lost a contract, and this contract was worth 6 digits. He was about a $500,000 company, but it was a big substantial portion of his business, and because he lost that contract, he didn't know if he was able to survive. He had just had a child, and he was actually planning on going back to his full main job. And he had done the CPRED business sort of as a side thing, and he had grown it for 6 years. He did very, very well, and he started like how everybody else starts, very small, and then kept moving and moving and moving it along up until he was creating a $500,000 business. So because he lost a client, I was hesitant in the beginning to even consider buying out the business because there were just so many unknowns. But like in life, there is a lot of unknowns. And so my thought process was, originally we had only wanted to buy like a $30,000, we'll spend $30,000 buying out a business. That's what we had saved up for, that's what we had projected for. And the quote he quoted was substantial. It was in the 6 figures, which is understandable, especially for the size of his business. And at the same time, I was also hesitant because he was going through a lot of changes, and something really unfortunate had happened, which was the loss of the contract. And I felt like I was not necessarily taking advantage of him, but taking advantage of the situation. And it did bother me because I knew him sort of personally, and I didn't want to buy out a business because of someone else's, I would say, bad luck, basically. Also, to be honest, I really prayed about it because it was difficult, morally, and then also, big financial step. This company was almost as big as we were, and we would literally be doubling our business, and I didn't know if we had that infrastructure. So I got the team around, we did several talks, we had discussions, and this was very fast moving because he had to sell the business almost beginning of December, and we were talking about a transition period of 30 days. So by the time the New Year's rolls around, so that way he doesn't have any more accounting stuff, we had to buy it out in full by the end of December. So we literally only had like 3-4 days to do that. Meet about half of the amount in terms of the financial need. I'm one of the ones where I only have one credit card, everything else I pay outright. So we went ahead and got a loan, a business loan. So one thing that people don't realize is that you have a personal credit score and then you have a business credit score. We used our business credit score in order to actually purchase the loan through our business account, so that way it wouldn't affect my personal credit score. I knew that we were sort of financially stable because of how we were building up. As again, there was a lot of unknowns because he had just lost this major contract. We didn't know whether we could get it back. And then a lot of the instructors, with how they lost the contract and different other factors, they were upset, which is understandable. So even when we transitioned over, we didn't know if all the instructors would stay with us. And one of the top goals that I had was the retention. I wanted 100% retention of all the instructors, and I felt I didn't want any of them to leave on a bad note because of this situation that had arisen. So after we hashed out some of the details and we actually wanted to proceed with it, we had a small hiccup. One of the other major contractors had a right of refusal. And so what a right of refusal is that they can actually ask to buy out that part of the company that they had a contract for, and then maybe give it to somebody else. And so we alerted that contractor. They started getting their lawyers involved, and that took a lot of time, a lot longer than we anticipated. I believe that took about 3-4 weeks. While the 3 or 4 weeks was happening, we were still progressing forward, because no matter what, he had to just sell the company. And so we were hoping, and because we knew the contractors too, a lot of the stuff intertwined with the same contractors and stuff like that, just because of the type of business we had, luckily, and a lot of the things stayed the same, but there was a lot of things that were different also. So we kept on moving forward, just to anticipate like we were going to buy out the business. A big financial thing that I didn't exactly anticipate, but I should have, was the accounting aspect and the lawyer's aspect. So he had his lawyers look at it in terms of making the form, and then we had our lawyers looking at it, and then plus the accounting firm. We wanted to make sure that we were in good financial standings. So that way they were involved in it, and they were looking at the different details. So we were paying a substantial amount. I mean, we're talking about thousands of dollars for the lawyers and for the accounting firm. Luckily, with the size of our business, we had an accounting firm. It wasn't just one individual. So it was a little bit more expensive than usual. But because of the situation, I wanted to make sure that we had a backup plan, and we built in redundancies just in case something else happened. The person had, it was probably about 150 instructors. And so I ended up starting to call each and every single instructor. I spent 3 days literally nonstop calling the instructors, saying, hey, we're about to transition. I want to hear what you think about it. I want to make sure that you're on board with us and that you would actually be willing to work for us. And literally for 3 days nonstop, I would spend about 2-3 minutes calling each and every single instructor. Some of the instructors were going to move on because they were in retirement or different things was happening, which is understandable. And then some of the instructors, as I said, were pissed off. They were really angry. I heard what they had to say. We tried to meet them halfway, and we had about a 95% retention rate, which to me is pretty phenomenal, good, and I was pretty happy about that. Bought out the other company, whether he had one employee would come on board with us. And luckily that person did. If now 6 months later, if that person did not come on board with us, probably we would have failed. That person was a key player in terms of the transition. All the other instructors were familiar with her, and so she made the transition a lot smoother, even though there was bumps along the way. Definitely a lot smoother than it would have been if we had to start over from scratch. So one of the big takeaways that I'll probably always keep with me is always hire one of the employees, if possible, if not all the employees of another company, so that way the transition is a lot better. Contacting all the contractors, we had to have them sign new contract forms, we had to get new payroll, we couldn't merge the QuickBooks together. We tried to set up a different pay scale, but we ended up keeping the pay scale that the other company had because there was so much pushback with it. The transition time happened during the holidays, during Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. And looking back at it now, I didn't think that would be that big of a deal. You know, I've always spent Christmas and Thanksgiving with family and stuff like that. And now looking back, I would have made a big push to start the transition time after the New Year's. It affected me more than I anticipated. I had been working really hard up to that point. I was still in my federal government job, and then I was, doing this at the same time. And then there was the inauguration that was happening, so a lot of things were playing out. And so for the inauguration, they stationed me down in the Washington, D.C. area for a whole month. Luckily, I had a project manager who handled a lot of the aspects of the transition, but it was just the mental stress and stuff like that that was happening. I didn't spend any time with my family, which I didn't think that was a big deal because every year I would see my family. But it affected me afterwards because, my parents are up there in age, and it made me value my family a lot more, missing that. And I am thankful actually that I found that out, you know, in my younger years versus in my later years. You know, God forbid my parents didn't make it during the holiday season, you know, and I would have missed out on that. So it was a little bit guilt with that aspect. But I definitely would have pushed, and I am pushing, if I was to buy out another business. Definitely not during the holiday season. That would have been my, I would have put my foot down on that. I had to switch quite a bit of this stuff over. We were not familiar with Enrollware, so we had to learn out that whole new process. They have their own merchant provider system, and we had our own, so we actually canceled our other merchant provider system, and then we went on with Enrollware. We did negotiate for a better deal because we were doing so many sales, which was good. I always encourage people to negotiate contracts, negotiate pricing, whether it be certification prices, buying in bulk, or even the merchant fee prices too. So I think instead of getting like 3.0, we were able to negotiate down to 2.2, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but you know, when you're dealing with $1 million sales inventory, then that does make a big difference. I mean, 0.1% makes a big deal. We're learning a lot of the new systems that was the other company used. Then we had to cancel out some of our own system. One of the things that we had to talk about was we had quite a bit of employees, and then we ended up switching them to become contractors because they wanted to teach on their own and stuff like that, which is understandable. So that's a time where we also cut out about half of our employees, and then we made them contractors. And so now we have a set core group of people, and then everybody else is contractors. Anyone who's actually teaching is contractors. Switch out the company insurance. It doubled because, you know, our company was doubling in size. Phone numbers, we did still utilize the other company's phone, and then we utilized our own phone number also. Divided up the region, sort of anything past the Penmar line and upward, we'd use the old company's phone number or the other company's phone number, and then anything from the Penmar line and down, we would use the one that we were using for our company. We had to pinpoint the marketing techniques and stuff like that in terms of things that were online. So like Facebook, Twitter, we had to get all those passwords for it. MailChimp, luckily we were sort of using MailChimp even though we were using Constant Contact at the same time. Then we dropped Constant Contact and now we're just using MailChimp. So it was just a wide variety of things that we ourselves didn't even really anticipate in terms of the things that we needed to look out for. We have an overall list if people are interested in on the things that we had to merge over and the things that you should be looking out for that you may not. And then we had to distribute the gear, and since we sell items and stuff like that, we had to make sure that those things were in place, so that way beginning January 1st, people would be able to start selling it. We had to make sure that our contracts were in place, that they were airtight in terms of the rental, and then the actual overall business agreements. Only about half the people signed the documents, or half the instructors signed the documents for the new contract, since we were buying out the business. Then we had to contact the other people. So usually what we did was we sent out the contracts beginning in December. We waited about 2 weeks, and then we started calling the people, be like, hey, you know, once again we called the instructors. We're buying out this company. We definitely want you to stay with us. We heard, you know, their thoughts, their ideas, and then we're like, you know, you have to switch. We have to sign this contract, and then we need your payroll information. And of course, some of them, they're like, oh, well, you know, we have payroll with QuickBooks, but QuickBooks, we couldn't merge that because we were our own entity. So it's not like we were buying out necessarily the company. We're actually buying out the assets because we couldn't buy out the company name. So 6 months later, at the point that we're at now, I am happy to report that the transition did actually go pretty well. And we're actually doing good. We were able to get the other contractor on board, resolve certain situations, and we've doubled in size. We continue to grow. One of the big benefit, which I found out, that it actually might be better to buy out other companies versus trying to start something yourself. If you're new and you're watching this video, I do recommend, if you have the funding, to go out and actually buy another company. A lot of the stuff is set in place versus like what the other company owner did, and what Campaign Paid For did also, is we started out small, and then we moved up the ladder. Sometimes it is better to buy out a company, even if it is failing a little bit. Try to do a 180 and then make it more successful. So I still talk with the prior business owner, and part of the agreement I did have is that he would stay on for a whole year as a consultant. So if we were able to get contracts and stuff like that, or prior contracts, he would talk with us in terms of how to deal with it and things like that. And we've gotten quite a bit of contracts from the years prior with his business, and we've merged it over with our business. And I am pretty thankful about that. I definitely do recommend that you buy that, you put that in the contract when you're transitioning, that you have a 1-year period with the business owner or with a project manager. So that way, if there's bumps along the road, they're able to talk you through it. So I hope that this helped. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really does make a difference, and hopefully you found value in this video.